over the years, I've accumulated a lot of, knowledge, talent, experience. And if you can take that and give it back, use it to help others. And even if it was something bad that you went through, like I did, and how I was able to turn it around and focus it and just help a large group of people with that too. No matter what the talent is, whether it's knitting, whether it's you're a hairdresser or somebody, or you're a DIYer, or you're a dating coach, there's so many avenues for you to do that and help others along the same way. This is how we can make the earth a better place than when we were born into it.
Hello and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. I'm your host, Carl Buccellato. Our guest today is Jeff Ostroff, and he is a blogger, a podcaster, a engineer. He's a do-it-yourself expert who's been telling people for years online how to get things done, and he's generally a very astute man. I had the good fortune of having lunch with him today, and I'm always inspired by him. Jeff, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
You have quite a history online with your podcast and your blog. As a matter of fact, I just recently watched your latest one on the cockpit voice recorder, and I thought that was quite a story. So you're really an investigative reporter as well.
Yeah, well, as an engineer, we always have to dig deep into the specs behind parts. When you buy something in the store, think of all of the engineering work that went behind, not just designing and building it, but every single part had to be investigated by the engineer, and it had to be vetted to see if it's a useful part to use.
Right.
And I've always taken that and put it into an investigation as well. And, where I do a lot of, remodeling of buildings, I often uncover the crimes of builders when you pull off the drywall to see what happened behind the scenes there. And I go into the codes, the building codes, and I can point out, oh, this is the code he violated. That's the code he violated. So
it's funny you should say that, because just today I had a team of people at my house. We have a portico in the front of our home that over the roof overhang. There's a portico, and there's some poles that looked like they were holding up the portico, but they were really just fascia. Come to find out they were just fascia because the base of them had cracked and water got in there and they got all rotted. And I thought the whole roof was going to fall. And they showed me with the degrees. No, there's a beam across there. This is just fascia. But they came in to build some new structure today. I would have never known that. I looked at that kind of thing and I said, oh my God, the whole roof is going to fall off. But of course it doesn't. But you're an engineer, so you understand those things, and you understand how those kinds of discovery where you're supposed to look into things is very much part of life, and that we should learn from that as individuals as we go about our relationships with others and as we live in this society. And we have to examine things with an open eye and find the truth. Don't you find that to be true? Especially in this day and age with politics we are involved with.
Or like Reagan said, trust but verify.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
And when I was an engineer at Motorola, every time a vendor would come to us with a part, trust but verify. We take that part and we run it through advanced life testing. We run it through a couple of weeks of temperature cycling and humidity cycling and dust and all sorts of drop testing and things like that to make sure that it can handle some of our, the military grade requirements.
Right. And, I guess we've been living for some time now with an enormous number of regulations and codes through the EPA and through other agencies of the government that some people say have slowed down progress. Some people say they would designed to stop progress and eliminate, free enterprise and capitalism from blooming. Some people say it's necessary to protect the individual. I guess some part of all of that may be true. The reality is sometimes the rules overlap the design to get things accomplished. Would you find that?
Well, I found it in a couple of places. So we were helping an elderly lady in Coral Springs sell her property over off of Coral Hills Drive there a few years ago. And it was discovered by the buyer's inspector that there was an old furnace tank, small tank buried at the side of the house underneath. Because I guess back in the 60s and 70s, some people, for whatever reason, had furnaces down here in Florida. It's very rare. But the problem is they found out that because of all of the new EPA rules and everything, that the quote to have that thing pulled out of the ground was going to be $10,000. I'm like, are you
Ouch.
kidding me? Me and a
Ouch.
couple of guys with a couple of shovels could have dug that thing out in an afternoon, but because
Yeah.
of all of these rules and regulations and whatever has to be done, and it's like, oh, that's nonsense.
And then
And then,
in addition to the cost, you'd have to wait months and months and months for the approval to do
right.
it.
And some people can't afford that. She couldn't afford to have that done. So they sold the house, the new owner
Uh,
took on the responsibility of
As is
knowing
condition, yeah.
if you want to ever take that tank out, that's what you're going to be faced with. So this is a classic example of, yeah, I can understand you want to protect the environment and all that, but on an empty tank that hasn't been used in God knows how many years, you know? And then over at our older church, when we were up in the big church on the hill, we had a big diesel generator outside and there was an oil tank there. So they hadn't used the generator in years. And I was tasked with selling that generator on eBay, and I sold it to a company in Jamaica. But part of the issue there was that we were paying a quarterly fee to the EPA for this tank for who knows what. I don't even know if they ever
And it wasn't
came
even
to
used.
inspect it. And it
Yeah.
was just more money given to them for who knows what. And so, yeah, regulation, I think, has gone far and beyond. I'm all for protecting the environment and, trying to prevent smog and making, batteries safer and, not filling up the landfills. But, when you start getting into this kind of overly dogmatic stuff, it's
Sure.
just out of
Let, let,
control.
let's look for a moment at what happened to protect a handful of little fish in California. And what happened when they decided to turn off the water flow in order to save those little fish, and all those millions and billions of dollars worth of loss to fire because of poor water control. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the epitome of ridiculousness. They could have
Yep.
relocated those fish into a fishbowl rather than to do something like that. Absurd.
Yep.
And there are many instances where these old wooden poles that are used for electrical to hold the electric wires that go through the fire zones of there. They wanted to change them into concrete poles, but the uh, uh, the naturalists, the Greenpeace people said you can't do that because there are certain little plants growing around these poles, and we can't disturb them.
Yeah.
So they just added to the fire issue. I mean, there comes a time in our lives, and I guess the life of a society also, where I guess that's what Trump is talking about.
Yeah.
Common sense. It's a matter of common sense, isn't it?
Right.
Coming
And
back
if
to
you
reality.
remember, I forget what year it was when they had all of those protests about the pipeline. And you remember
Yeah,
all of the celebrities came and converged and
yeah,
everything. And
yeah.
every celebrity was trying to outdo each other to show up and probably just to create a name for themselves.
Sure.
But what we discovered afterwards, if I remember correctly, it was like a $14 million cleanup fee from the mess they
Yeah,
left
yeah,
behind
yeah,
because there was nowhere to put trash or anything. And of course, they all drove up there in SUVs, gas guzzling
yeah.
SUVs, and they're like, "Come on!"
It's like that program that
Yeah,
they meet in Europe once a year to talk about Greenpeace and how they're going to save the planet, and hundreds of people show up in their private jets. I mean,
yeah,
how ridiculous could it get?
yeah. And
They
I don't
no
hear them
common
mentioning
sense.
volcanoes.
No,
Volcanoes dump a lot into the sky too. I mean, and I know
absolutely.
that they don't happen like every day, but still, they got to be dumping something. When you look at a massive volcanic eruption, when they show it on the news, there's columns and columns of black smoke going like this.
Yeah,
And yet these people are complaining about farting cows.
yeah,
You heard about that, right?
yeah.
Where they wanted
Absurd.
us to not make so much hamburger meat because of
Yeah,
the farting cows or some ridiculous stuff. I'm
yeah.
like, that's ridiculous.
Well, we know now there's proof that mankind has dumped an enormous amount of waste on this planet. There's no doubt about it. But we have impacted the atmosphere with carbon dioxide less than 3%
Yeah.
into the ozone over the millenniums that man has existed on Earth. What makes us think that we are really going to impact it for the good or the bad, one way or the other?
Yeah. And
Nature
you know what's
really
strange?
kind of provides for itself.
Yeah. What I find is kind of strange and contradicting about all of this is that, all of the politicians every 4 years when the election comes up, they keep bringing up the environment and how we're going to do better. And either Trump was bad or this guy was bad and we're going to be better. And with all of these regulations they've been putting in place over the past 50 years, okay, why hasn't it gotten any better? And why are they blaming the opposite side when
Hmm.
every team that was in the administration
Hmm.
had their 4 years or 8 years chance
Hmm.
to improve it? And why isn't it improved? You
Well,
know?
maybe the answer to that lies in Elon Musk's discovery of all the tens of hundreds of billions of dollars that have been misrouted or stolen or
Hmm.
just fragrantly given away in the wrong places and not used the way they said they were going to be used. I think there's a great deal to be said of how much we have wasted
Yeah.
as a people and impacted. Here we say we represent and we stand for freedom in the world. We're against terrorism, and yet we've been paying billions of dollars in support to terrorist groups around the world of your taxpayer, your tax money and mine. And we've never known about it. We've never had a say in it.
Yeah.
It's pretty desperate, really, when you think about that, what they've
Hmm.
done. So what's your idea? What is your thoughts about what went on with the recent speech, the president's speech to the combined House of the Congress and the Senate, and what you saw there on TV that night? What do you think about that?
Well, I thought he hit some valid points. And, unfortunately, I missed the Democratic rebuttal. So I didn't get to hear what they would have had to say as a counterpoint, because I do like to look at all of the points. Um, I'm not sure I agree with the tariffs. I do agree that something needs to be done according to those lines that he was looking at. Um, 70,000 deaths, I think he said, from fentanyl
Yeah,
every year.
yeah.
Is it necessarily all coming from Canada? I don't know. Are we making some here in the United States that's killing people? Probably. But I don't think there just never seems to be a winner when you put tariffs in, because they both sides keep escalating. It's like
I
détente.
think, yeah, I agree with you. I think that's primarily a negotiating tool on his part. And they're already getting different countries around the world to commiserate because they don't want the impact of what it means. In the first place, they charge us so much more in tariffs than we charge back out. They don't even want to try to disturb that. They'll lower it a little bit, but they
Yeah,
don't want to try to disturb it. When you think about Canada, Canada is making this to do about a 25% tariff. But we have a 50 and 80% tariff on dairy goods that come from the United States into Canada. They charge us 50 and 80% to go into Canada. So they're blocking our markets, which is another thing. But one of the things that I looked at that thing, and it was an hour, 100 minutes long. I think he made some very valid points. He played on the emotion of us who were watching it by bringing so many people in as examples, the little boy with
yeah,
the cancer and the mothers of the children that were killed by these illegals. And I can empathize with those people, and I saw it as an emotional twist on the speech. But when I watched the reaction of the Democrat on how they responded to the speech, I thought to myself, these are supposed to be people who are representing the constituents of their
yeah,
various countries, cities, and states, and they're acting like petulant children.
yeah,
Instead of showing respect for the office and for the Congress and the Constitution, they acted like petulant children. And they're getting
yes.
more and more like that every day,
Do you remember how they kept showing them with the signs that said like
Yeah.
lies? I was like, I
Yeah.
want the camera to pan back to them when they showed the kid with the cancer and
Yeah. They did. They were
the other
just sitting there
girls.
stoically. At one
Yeah,
point, one of the cameras, I kept switching back and forth between CNN and Fox. And Fox would pan back and show them. CNN didn't show them. But when
yeah,
Fox panned back and they were sitting there like this, and these poor kids, the world was applauding them because of what they had gone through. And these people were sitting there as though those children were responsible for Donald Trump and his actions.
right.
You can get to a point where, you say a never Trumper. You say, I won't agree with him. But good sense should tell you, you need to look for the benefit of the country and the people that you're supposedly serving. There are certain advances that are going on right now, like saving all these billions of dollars. They're twisting it to sound like, well, they're trying to take the Social Security and Medicare away from you. No, they're not. They're trying to preserve it by eliminating all that fraud and waste. And
Yeah.
yet you'd never hear a Democrat say that. But
Well,
more and more
Social Security
Democrats,
was allegedly supposed to be insolvent by like 2024 to
yeah,
20.
Yeah.
26 or something like that.
Yeah.
So the Democrats never even solved that problem.
No.
What's going to happen when it does become insolvent? How are they
Well,
going to
it's not
fix
going
that?
to become insolvent because there's all those billions of dollars waste. There are people that are on the payroll getting paid on a monthly basis billions of dollars a year that don't exist anymore. They've been dead for years
Mhm.
and years and years, and yet the money keeps going out. So the thing is, correct that. Stop those people to whoever's stealing those checks because they obviously are being cashed and get it down to a manageable percentage. Plus, I really think, and I've thought this for some time, you're supposed to get out what you put in, but they've managed Social Security in such a way that it ends up with a yield in interest earnings or revenue earning of 1 to 2% a year. Any idiot could get better than that themselves in
Yeah.
bonds and in the marketplace if they managed it correctly.
Or a
And
CD
then you think
even.
about all those billions of dollars they stole 30 years ago when they
Yeah.
transferred it out of the Social Security fund to use for other things. It
Yeah,
makes
and you know
it,
what made my blood boil about like these 100-year-old, 150-year-old people, whatever, still collecting? Is like, how could that possibly happen? Because when my mother died, you know what they did? Like, I think she died on the first, and I think they pay on the third or whatever. They came back into her bank account a few days
yeah,
later and took
to
that
claw
money
it
back
back.
out.
He did
What
the
the
same thing
heck?
they did the same
Yeah,
thing with my mother. They clawed it
yeah.
back. Okay.
And
Like,
so, how do these people get away with it? And that's really got to anger the people that I've helped in the past that I ministered to through our mercy ministry program who are trying to get on disability. And we had to
yeah.
go through lawyers and judges to force Social Security to put them, a known disabled person, on disability. They would keep coming back with no. I mean, how do you come back with no when somebody has jumped through all of the hoops and said, got the doctor's letters and everything? And they're not letting them get on disability, but yet they're paying out somebody who's been dead for 50
Well,
years.
I don't understand that either, and I don't want to think conspiracy, and I don't want to think it has to do with with people's political persuasion. But I can't help but think it may be some groups of people on the inside that are allowing things to happen, and that's why I think it's really good to clean sweep this whole bureaucracy there. Because
Mhm.
I mean, look at what we found out last week. An aide of Biden's, President Biden, who was in
Mhm.
the White House on a regular basis, came forward and said they'd been using an auto pen for 4 to 6 months to sign things that were supposedly signed by the president with his power, which means you don't even know if he was aware of it because of his dementia. And
Yeah,
things went into law and monies were spent because some bureaucrat used the auto pen.
yeah. I
But
always
that's
wondered from the beginning of his presidency if it was really setting up for Kamala to become president. Maybe people were
it
just
was
hoping
clearly
something might
setting up
happen where,
it was clearly setting up for somebody because
yeah,
Obama always thought he was an idiot. He didn't
yeah,
support him after Obama went out. He supported uh, 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 Hillary instead of him, who
yeah,
ran against Trump and lost. And it was only because they had nobody else to run that they put him up there. And then they
yeah.
tried it again the second time when it was clear he couldn't function. The man could not function. So here we are in America where people are experiencing massive change. And there's a lot of issues going on that's causing depression and fear and things of that kind. And I only know that, as far as I know, I'm a simple guy. I know one thing: God loves me. And I know that if I put myself in his hands, he will carry me to where I need to be. Wherever that is, we talked about that at lunch today.
Hmm.
You have to stand up and be counted for in this country. I think for a long time, people were afraid to come forward and say they were Christians because of persecution. And now, hopefully, we're in a climate and an economy where that's not going to happen any longer, where people can declare who they are and give praise to our God. And I know you're the same kind of man. I know
Yeah.
that's what you believe in. So tell us a little bit about Jeff and some of your background as an individual and a person, because everybody sees you on your exposure through all your shows and everything.
Mhm.
But I don't know if people know much about your background.
Well, I've always wanted to leave this earth better than when I arrived. If anything I can do to make it better, and I've always liked to help others. I've always liked to kind of like warn others of issues or how to save money. Even as an 11-year-old kid, I was like a consumer advocate. I'd run to all my friends. Did you see what they're doing with potato chips? The bags are this big now and the potato chips are like this. So I was like a little Ralph Nader. So my whole life, people were always kind of calling me like a Ralph Nader, you know? And he must have been of the same sort of grain, because why would you devote your whole life to that? He was at the point where he was like in Washington and in the faces
Right.
of the
Oh, yeah.
lawmakers
Oh, yes.
and everything. And so I've always had that sort of like caring about others. And keep in mind, I didn't become a Christian until I was like 40 years old or
Oh,
so,
wow.
42. So I was a sort of a late bloomer. I married my wife. She was a Christian. She started going to the church, going back to church again, a few years before me. It really wasn't until our kids were born and we were getting them baptized. And I said, you know what, I think I'm going to just start going. And then I started going and got more and more convicted of my sins. And I was glad that we ended up in the church where we're at now, because it's a solid Presbyterian church that preaches the doctrine,
Right.
perfectly,
Right.
and doesn't take any kinds of falsehoods at all. Doesn't accept it.
Right.
So
Right.
it's really really good that we fell under that sort of tutorship. And then I joined the Mercy Ministry program. There, I eventually became a deacon and joined the Mercy Ministry program, where now we help all of the elderly folks, the single moms, people who can't pay their bills. Their electric's about to get shut off, so we help them with that. And what was interesting is that being an engineer, when it's amazing how I have the knack of taking the bad things that happen to us in life and turning it into just unimaginable blessings. So when I got hired as an electrical engineer right out of college, my first buying a new car purchase, that was my first big purchase. I already knew some of the tricks the car dealers did, but this was just unbelievable amounts. And the troubles that I had with the extended warranty and getting it covered by General Motors caused a lot of problems. I mean, virtually, I wasn't able to get like a single repair covered by this thing,
Oh, wow.
and or even the car rental that they promised me. So I learned how to force them into action by going to the Florida State Attorney Generals and filing stuff like that. So I used that to start a website that I started back in 1997. I was the first person of anybody I personally know to start a website, because back then, what did we have for internet? We had AOL,
Yeah. Right.
and that isn't even really true internet. It was, you were sort of given what was on the screen when you logged in.
Yeah. Right.
So I had an actual website, and I started it as a warning to people about the extended warranties. And then I started to add a few more things on there and a few more. And then all of a sudden, Yahoo sends me an email, and they were the big search engine back in 1997. They said, Jeff, we love your site, which you have on there. We're adding you to our automotive directory, because remember, Yahoo was a directory; it wasn't really a
Yeah.
search engine.
Right. Right.
And so I said, oh, that's cool. So I didn't think anything of it. I was getting like 50 clicks a day, and from there, it shot up to like 800 clicks a day, like just like that, and it kept going as the internet got bigger and bigger, and more people were getting online. Then I started getting companies contacting me saying, hey, we'd like to have you be an affiliate of ours, where you mention our product, and if somebody buys it, or generates a lead, then, we'll pay you. And the guys at Motorola were like, Jeff, man, that's a scam. These guys are going to rip you off. There's no way. And I go, no, no. They said it's real. I showed them here's the contract. It's a real contract. And then all of a sudden, a month later, a check comes and they go, no, no, it's going to bounce. It's going to bounce.
They
And
couldn't
it didn't
tolerate the
bounce.
fact.
Yeah. So I went from zero to $500 in the first month. The second month, it was $800. The third month, it was $1,200. So you can see how rapidly
Yeah.
it was
Right.
going. And that's when I really started to get the knack for, oh, here's how we do this online marketing, and start to, work on search engine optimization and click-through rates. Because the more traffic we could get to our site, the more leads we would send to people, and then the more people we could help and educate. So it was really a win-win for everybody. We were giving people every single car dealer scam in the world. We had spreadsheets that I created, of course, as an engineer, that showed you how to determine how much the car dealer truly paid for the car, not just the invoice price, but how
Yeah,
to
right.
determine that and add a little bit of profit on there for the dealer, and then come up with a fair deal that is fair. And as our Savometer showed over the years, as it kept rapidly climbing, we were saving people boatloads of money. So that was the power there of using the internet to help many people at once. So remember, this
That's
was all
great.
back in 97. What were you doing in 97? Do you remember the internet in 1997?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was part of we were starting a company on the internet in 1997 that was a platform for the mortgage industry.
Hmm.
And that grew to be a behemoth. Actually, they call it well, I forget what they call it, but this giant growth company that when we took it public, uh, they wouldn't let us on the New York Stock Exchange because we weren't doing enough revenue. They put us on the American exchange, but it grew so rapidly. The next year, they boosted us up to the New York and they named us the number one growing company in America. And
Wow.
that company was called Ellie Mae, Electronic Mortgage
Oh yeah.
Affiliates.
Yeah.
That was well, I'm part of the team that put Ellie Mae together, and
Yeah.
we grew it. We grew it to a behemoth, and we sold it not too long ago to a giant company who we thought we did very well because of all the bees that were involved in the sale. But they
Hmm.
turned around and flipped it to the New York Stock Exchange for $11.6 billion 2 years later, and that is
Wow.
now
That's
called it's
awesome.
now called ICE. You know what ICE is? The New York Stock Exchange, the financial network is called ICE. That was
Well, when I
Ellie
think
Mae.
ICE, I think of people getting
I know
deported.
you're talking about deporting, but it was originally Ellie Mae.
Yeah.
We had
And
43% of the whole financial market came through our network.
that was
But
incredible. Yeah. We had
yeah,
E-Loan on our website back in the day,
yeah,
if you remember
yeah,
them.
yeah, sure
We had
did.
Capital One, we had Carfax, a lot of the real big names. And no matter who the company was, we were like their number one person. So whenever we went to
That's
the
great.
NADA, which is the auto dealers, the big
That's
convention
great.
every year, we would always get invited to these parties and the penthouses.
Yeah.
And so what's amazing about all of this, it's almost excellence by accidents. Because I didn't really do anything. I just had my little old tiny webpage up,
You didn't go
and
looking for
Yahoo
that. It
came
just kind
knocking.
of, yeah,
Yeah, and that got the ball rolling. And then once we started to get really good at making our sites show up high in Excite and Lycos, which the other big ones at the time, and then Google came along in '99, and then we did really well with them. And then it was like a huge gravy train for a number of years. We were able to pay off our house, bought 2 cars with it, paid for the
So
kids'
let's see. When I
college.
left lunch today, there was a Bentley SUV in the parking lot. Was that
Not
yours?
mine. I wish it was mine.
That was
I
beautiful.
wish it was mine. Yeah. So my car it's a 10-year-old Mercedes E-Class. So I bought it when it was 3 years old at 56% off of the original sticker. The
Wow,
sticker was still in the car when I bought it
wow,
from the
wow.
previous owner. So that's a good way to buy a car, about
Yeah,
3 to 5 years into it.
yeah,
As it turns out, mine had about 3 months of the warranty actually left on it. Didn't need it though, but
yeah.
so anyway, this whole thing with it, and our website is called carbuyingtips.com. It's actually still up. We still have it running. But the interesting thing about that is how one little bad experience with my original car purchase in 1988, I was able to take that years later and turn it into a massive blessing that financially blessed us and also financially blessed thousands of peoples. We were getting probably 100 emails a day from people that we would answer and help
Wow.
them guide them through the car buying process. And so we would learn, we had the pulse of the car buying market of every scam that was going on. So every year we used to publish a list of our top 10 car dealer scams. And so probably the highlight of our action there was one time I got on CNBC or no, MSNBC. They interviewed me live. So that was pretty cool to get on there. And of course, many newspapers had interviewed us over the years as well.
That's exciting times to do things like that.
Hmm. That all kind
I
of came
understand.
to a crashing end when 2012, when Google came out with this famous algorithm change known as Penguin.
Yeah.
And we got caught up in it as well as a lot of other medium tiered websites. And we were never really able to recover out of that. So what I kind of did was we still have that going off on the side. And I started, since I was already doing remodeling of condos, I was buying flip condos at the foreclosure auction. And I buy them, fix them up, gut them down to the studs, fix everything that was wrong, remodel them, and flip them. And I would typically make, $40,000, $50,000 on a condo. And I decided to just start filming everything I did because I go, people must be going through the same thing we're going through.
Yeah, right.
And I just kind of started from there around 2015 timeframe. And at that time, I didn't know you could make money on YouTube. I was completely oblivious. I had a YouTube channel since 2006. Again, excellence by accident, had no clue you could make money because YouTube started this partner, I forget the name of what they call it, the revenue sharing program in
Yeah.
2013. And so if you have an AdSense account, when they show commercials on your videos, you make money from it. So all of a sudden, December 2017 rolls around and I see my bank account and I'm trying to reconcile, where is this $200 coming from? I have no idea where it's coming from. I didn't earn this. I mean, where is it? And after researching it, I found out, oh, it says Google. It must be coming from Google somehow. And I eventually traced it to my Google AdSense account. I go, why is my Google AdSense account sending me money? I used to use it to pay to
Yeah,
advertise,
right.
to get viewers to my website. And so I found out that it was coming through my YouTube channel after tracing it and tracing it, doing my engineering, right? And I said, oh, my YouTube channel is generating this. I had no idea. And I had 1,000 subscribers at the time. And I'm doing the math. If I have 1,000 subscribers, what do you think would happen if I got to 10,000? How much I'd be making? Because that, to me, back then, that was like 10,000 is way up there, man.
Yeah, right.
And so it took me about a year or two to get to 10,000. And then I started to get to the point where I'm at $1,000 a month. Hey, that's almost the mortgage payment now. I could
Mhm.
really make something with this.
Yeah, right.
And I just kept going and going and just slowly building and got up to, I hit 100,000 subscribers here on YouTube. And let's see, was it 2000, right around September of 2000? So it was right in the middle of the COVID shutdown that had happened. And then we had that condo collapse in Miami,
Right.
where 98 people got killed in
Right,
Champlain
right.
Towers. And
And
I
they say there's going to be more of those.
yeah, there is going to be more. We
Yeah.
have more. They don't all make the news.
Yeah.
But I did decide to go down there and I did a couple of live streams that turned out to be really good. And that's when I stumbled onto this whole thing of we call it sort of trendjacking, or, the trend is your friend. If something's trending in the news and you put a video up on it, you're likely to get swept up into that wake and get a lot of views. But it turns out so many people were interested in this story. And I had no idea until I went down there. And next thing you know, somebody brushes up against me and I look and it's Anderson Cooper. I'm like, holy cow,
Oh, wow.
what's he doing here? Because I had no idea that it was that this big national event. I knew it locally, it was on the news. And then 5 minutes later, I'm standing at the CNN booth and I'm like, videoing them doing an on-air interview. Then somebody else brushes up against me and I look and it's Dr. Sanjay Gupta. I'm like, what's he doing here? Then I don't know why I had tunnel vision. I look and like three tents down, I'm seeing Lester Holt, David Muir, Shepard Smith behind me on another tent. I'm like, oh, this is really big stuff for every one of these guys to fly down here.
That's
And they
right.
set up a tent for them. So that became a massive story for me too, where I really dug even deeper into the engineering and what's causing failures. Because now I'm getting contacted by everybody and their mother saying, let me send you a picture of my condo building. I think I'm seeing something similar. Can you tell me if this looks like it's going to be a problem? And then I'm, just hearing from everybody, all of the problems and maintenance that they're seeing in there. So I just kept doing more and more of these. And that one just really gave me quite a bit of growth. So now
Yeah, I
I'm up
can
to
imagine.
600,000 subscribers. I just hit that
Wow.
last week.
God bless. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's,
600,000. But I
yeah,
know you did a show, you did a review after Trump's, they attempted to assassinate Trump. And
yeah.
you had, what, 1 million hits on that thing? Something
Yeah,
like that?
what was really cool, that happened on a Saturday, and I'm at the gym when this happened. And I'm looking at the stories while I'm at the gym and I'm sitting in the sauna and I go, should I do a video on this? It's not really engineering. It's not DIY. It's sort of outside what I cover, but people know that if I do something on it, I'm going to cover it really thorough. So
Yeah.
I did. I went home and I put together a video based on all of the facts that I could gather that day. And I think I launched it at, I don't know, midnight or something like that. And then after church at lunch the next day, it hit 1 million views in one day. So
That's
yeah.
more, I understand. Someone told me that's more coverage than CNN and NBC had on that subject in an entire week.
Well, it could be. I don't know.
More than they had in a week.
Yeah. And
That's
I
quite
did
something.
I probably did a dozen or so follow-up videos as more information came out and as the body cams from the police were released.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
some of those did really well. Some of those did over 1 million. Some were in the several 100,000 view range. I did quite well last year with the videos on the Dolly, the MV Dolly ship that
Mm,
crashed into
mm.
the Francis Scott Key Bridge
Yeah,
in
sure,
Baltimore. I
sure.
did, I think, close to 30 videos because each day there was more updates on the engineering behind, you know, trying to get rid of all of that debris and getting it off of the boat, and how are they going to get that ship and get it back to the dock, right, and all of that stuff. So that was a mystery that held everybody just captivated, and that one gained me a number of subscribers. So both of those events last year enabled me to pay my taxes,
Well, good for you. But
which there
I
was a
go
lot.
back to what I said earlier. That puts you in the category of an investigative reporter, really,
Hmm.
because you search out information and details and facts before you produce it, and you get very much in depth, and that's great. That's wonderful. We've talked a little bit offline about this little show that I do here, and I told you I do it primarily to have a voice myself to speak about it and to promote my book that pays for this. Matter of fact, my publicist will be remiss if I don't do this. This is what pays for this, folks. To Every Page is Turning, a book I wrote 5 years ago, and it's still an Amazon bestseller, and it's in its third printing, and it's a great read. A great read. Anyway, let's get back to Jeff. So,
Do they have that on Kindle too?
yes, it's on Kindle, and
Mm.
you can get it in a number of different bookstores. But Amazon is the easiest one; they deliver it right to you, and they can produce it on Kindle. And it's a story of my generation primarily, because it's primarily about my life. But my generation, I was born in 1942, so I remember all those things in the war years, and going through as a young boy the experience of seeing friends go away to the Korean War, and then as a young man myself and what it meant to my generation in the Vietnam War, and all about the paradigm shifts that went on at the end of the 20th century in terms of technology and business and how things exploded. But for me, and also included in that book and very important in that book, was my search for redemption, my search for God, and abilities to feel better about myself and be redeemed. And it's all there in that book. So people laugh, people cry, they see themselves in it. So it's a good read. And ladies and gentlemen, I know you've got a lot of things you'd like to ask Jeff and to inquire about him. All of his contact information will be in the show notes. You'll be able to click through and see his sites. You'll be able to write to him and find out how to get information from him. And I think he's just a wonder house of inspiration and information. And, there's a ton of things that I could have gotten into today about politics, and I'm sure he and I could have had a very good dialogue about them, because we both are the kind of men who don't take things for granted. We dig under the surface to find out. But the one thing that I know that we agree on is that Jesus is our Savior, and without him, there's nothing. So we're coming down to a close time. Would you like to say anything to anyone before we close off?
Yeah, I would say that, over the years I've accumulated a lot of, knowledge, talent, experience. And if you can take that and give it back, use it to help others. And even if it was something bad that you went through, like I did, and how I was able to turn it around and focus it and just help a large group of people with that too. And we had another website on how to get out of bad credit, how to, dealing with your mounting debts and stuff like that. And we actually used that, the stuff we were using in that website. to help people on our mercy ministry program. Because when people come to you for trouble, they're in trouble.
Sure.
And
Sure.
we had the experience through that to sit down with them with spreadsheets to do their budgets and tell in 10 minutes what's wrong with your budget and why you can't pay your electric bill. So no matter what the talent is, whether it's knitting, whether it's you're a hairdresser or somebody, or you're a DIYer, or you're a dating coach, there's so many avenues for you to do that and help others along the same way. This is how we can make the earth a better place than
Right.
than when we were born into it.
Absolutely. We have to reach out and share. We must be contributors to this world. If we're just here as takers, we don't do any good to anyone.
Mhm.
We're not an example to our children. We're not a contributor to society at large. We must be people who recognize that if to whom much is given, much is expected. Let's face it, much has been given to us. We won the gene pool. We were born in the United States.
Yep.
And when you think about how many benefits that we've had in our lives and how much is available to us with opportunity compared to the rest of the world, how dare we complain about anything? There's so much to do and so many people that are in need. And it's up to us to do it. We're supposed to be fishers of men. That's what God told us. That's not only to bring them into the faith, that's to show them how to live a better life, to give them some kind of support. So, Jeff, I thank you so much for being here with us today. I love this conversation. Let's do more of it because we barely got into scratching the surface of things we could talk about. I know there's a lot of things we could get into. So thank you.
We just the tip of the iceberg. Well, thank you. It was a pleasure to be here and to have this conversation with you as well.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you what I tell you every week. You have your own story. Jeff gave you a part of his story just now. You know my story, but you have your story, and no one can tell it like you can. Make sure you tell it to your loved ones. Tell it to your family. Write it down. Send it into the newspapers. Hey, Jeff Bezos is running the Washington Post now, and he changed the editorials there. There's no telling what they'll print. Send it in and share the advice, because when it's too late, and all that wisdom is gone. Share it with someone else. And I'm going to say what I say constantly. What do I know? I'm just this big blustery guy from Brooklyn. But I know this. Get somebody you know today, get them in a big bear hug, and tell them you love them. Tell them you love them. Maybe the only time they hear those words. And I'm quite sure God loves them also. He loves you, he loves Jeff, and he loves me. So God bless you all. Jeff, you know what I'm going to do now, right? I love you, man.
Love you, man.
Come back sometime. Thank you all very much. That's
all right.
it.
Bye.